the big truth in British politics at the moment is that well beyond traditional allegiances to left and right, there's a much deeper, wider, broader sense amongst the electorate that politics isn't working.
I think we're in face of the threshold of a real crisis, a crisis of trust in a crisis of lack of beliefs. I think it's, all the old creeds, all the old sense of values that would have held society together no longer do. I think we're in a crisis of trust in institutions. Most of the institutions of the state are not trusted. In many ways, the global institutions perhaps are trusted more like the internet, but the institutions of the states locked within their borders are not trusted.
I do think that we have a system that isn't reflective of the young people in this country, isn't diverse. There are class divides that prevent a lot of young people getting into the system, educational disenfranchisement, lots of things that are barriers already.
There is a crisis of trust in the sense that political institutions are seen as separate to the way that people live their everyday lives, and politics is seen as something that people don't really relate to on an everyday level.
I think for at least a generation there's been signs of the public sort of losing confidence, engagement with traditional politics. And the main forms of politics, remember, were defined in the late 19th century. Parliaments, parties, regular elections. And it's not surprising in a way they feel less relevant to people's lives. People have more voice, they have more choice, they have more data in every other walk of life. And that's led over 10, 20, 30 years to declining affiliation to political parties and more signs of perhaps unease and distrust.
I still think there is a problem with very powerful institutions abusing their power against the common good, and I think we need to find ways of addressing that.
I think generally the public feel that actually during the boom years, people at the top of politics and banking and actually big business and media, dare I say it, and across the board, football, a lot of the traditional parts of British life, the elites, the public feel have been getting away with too easy a life at their expense.
Political parties and membership of political parties is not what it used to be. There is other people's demands on time. People have other things to do which are dare I say it, a little bit more exciting than going into an AGM on a cold and wet Friday evening. But I think there are still very many ways that people do want to get engaged.
There is a disengagement in terms of the system, but young people have a lot to say. They have a lot of views on issues about public services and the way that the system works for them.
So what you're seeing in terms of this overall decline in saying that, I believe in my party, right or wrong, all of that, and the thing we saw at the last general election, whereas many people said they were going to vote on the character of the leader as on the policies, is not necessarily, people going off something, but just people changing.
When we see the declining turnout, declining membership of parties and so on, the biggest mistake any politician can make, I think, is to put that down to apathy, because people are not apathetic. People care very, very much about politics. You only have to look at the protest marches or the fact that millions of people sign up to pressure groups, millions of people take part in petitions like Avaaz and 38 Degrees and so on. So people are not apathetic. They don't like the way we do politics in this country, and that's the bit we have to address.
Here's the mismatch, I think, that we're living with, which is the way people live their ordinary lives. In front of their computer, where they can make friends across the world. They're unconstrained by geography. They're unconstrained by moral values on the one hand. They go to the supermarket and they are king. The customer's king today. They get choice. And the difference between the freedom of ordinary life, where you're treated as important in the marketplace, and the way you are governed by distant institutions hundreds of miles away that doesn't listen to what you say, that isn't sensitive to what you feel, that doesn't do what you want it to do, I think is the great cause of this crash of confidence.
So the public are increasingly used to instant, accessible and direct communication, direct participation, whether that's as consumers, users or activists, and actually they can read up on something on Wikipedia. You know, they can engage with something at the click of a button, and politics is largely being seen as being left behind in that.
People's lifestyles, people's choices, people's time preferences are changing generally, and politics has to respond to that.
We are witnessing some really important changes in both the economy and in political economy, driven by technology and choice and modern economics.
Whether in terms of education, whether in terms of transport, how are we going to make that more relevant to the flexibility that people want these days? And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face in terms of this, the political agenda, the political revolution.
I think it's inevitable. Either politics, our democracy, really becomes very weak, and I think there's a question mark over its future, or it moves with the times. And that means giving more people more power, more control, more ownership over the way we do democracy.
It's certainly true that people are becoming more values-led. The disenchantment of politics goes a lot more deeply than that. The truth is we have a system in which we demand a certain kind of perfection or promises from people, and then we reserve to ourselves the right to be incredibly rude about them when they fall short of these standards. And I think the secret for politicians is not to make promises in the first place.
I think they've been encouraged to behave as consumers by successive generations of politicians, but they encourage this sort of retail politics where, you can have this and we'll just sort of get through it, and I won't be around to deal with the consequences anyway, and it's all about winning next time. It's not about necessarily doing what the right long-term solution is. I think that's how the world's going, and that's how the techniques of marketing that have been taken into politics encourage politicians to behave.
So the trouble with political consumerism is that it reduces politics and political discussion to value for money in the consumer sense, as opposed to values and relationships and social participation and engagement, and that really tends to pit issues against each other.
The response of politics and politicians to the evolving sort of changes in society is, I think, the challenge for all political parties. Indeed, not only for parties, it is also for institutions, as it is for supermarkets in a way.
I think this deep and visceral sense of frustration at unaccountable elites means we have to be both quite clear about what is the glue that binds us and drives us on, actually from the left as well as the right. For good politics, the public need to see both.
It's really worth remembering that if we don't reform the way that we approach young people, and that we don't find ways to bring them into the system, that there are things that can happen that sometimes are beyond our control and are negative. They're a negative, perhaps, expression of some of the things that we would like young people to do in a more positive way.
Values matter, but nowhere near as much as relationships matter. So renewing a relational culture within institutions based upon the balance of interests, that will create a place that people can actively engage and make their lives better.
For me, the bottom line is that politics is about changing people's lives for the better. And if we can't get that out, we need to be able to get that across where people are, where people are choosing to show their activism. We need to be part of that.
Democracy took the forms it did, mainly because of the nature of communication technology in the 19th century. You had to send someone to sit in a parliament to make decisions for you, and every now and again you might hear back from them. Nowadays, with instant communication, we're struggling to work out what democracy should mean in a networked age. 20 or 30 years ago, people thought the answer was everything would be push button. People would instantly, do likes and dislikes on issues, or there'd be instant referenda. All experiences that leads to much worse quality of democracy.
There are signs that, yes, it's easy for people to click and show that they support this cause, and they do absolutely nothing else. At the same time, the disintermediation of the internet allows you to give money much more easily, and you can raise money much more easily and cheaply and cost effectively. You can organise people much more cheaply and cost effectively, and there are lots and lots of examples of that. So I think, you know, it does allow people to group together more quickly and easily. Has it fundamentally changed representative democracy? Not yet. Will it? Too soon to tell.
I think the new media give us the opportunity for people to feedback and input, and we should take that opportunity, and that's very helpful and important. But I wouldn't want that to be the sole channel of communication until we've reached a situation where more people are able to use it.
New media has meant that you can test very precisely hour to hour what the public's feelings are about a particular subject. That doesn't necessarily mean what their feelings are when they fully reflected on the subject, just what the, as it were, the aesthetics of the moment are. And if it's done well, that doesn't guide politics, but it certainly sheds some light on it.
Twitter is a very good negative feedback forum, you know, so you get some idea of what some people think about what you're doing. But the price of successful politics is a constructive alternative. That's not a very good agenda for a constructive alternative. It's about relationships between people. It's about place. So in many ways, the new technology intensifies the dissolution of place.
People want to see if they are engaging with their politicians, how much are their politicians engaging back.
If people feel that their views are being heard by their politician and yet the decisions are still not being influenced by people, then people will lose even more confidence in the political process. So alongside this radical technological change that we've seen in the last few years, we need to see political reform. We need to see political change so people actually do have more say.
It's not something that's taught to you from an early age. Young people don't learn about the system as they're growing up. And so it's those sorts of things we need to think about how we can make politics more of the usual for those that find themselves unusual suspects in the system.
Content is king. And it doesn't matter whether you've got the most expensive video in the world, the most groovy website, the best, you know, most amazing this, that or the other, unless it engages people, unless it's relevant, unless they believe that it does actually make a difference. It doesn't matter whether it's a beautiful video or a leaflet being delivered by a 90-year-old granny. It's going to be about the content and whether that appeals to people. And I think that's what the parties are still groping around with. You know, why should I bother getting involved with you? Why should I bother voting? I think the Russell Brand phenomenon is picking up this real disillusionment of younger people.
We have to move beyond left-right. I think left-right is defunct and towards a politics of the common good, which is about the reconciliation of estranged interests. That's capital and labour, immigrants, locals, north-south, men and women. That we've got a very policy-oriented, very technical, very silly kind of politics going on, and people are longing for a change.
We're reaching the beginning of the end of the old 19th century version of the nation state with a centralised government, and we have to think of a new distribution of powers between the citizen and the state. And there is only one way that we can resolve that, and that is move government closer to the people.
I think local government is one form, but only one form. I think we've got to look at institutions like universities. We've got to talk about vocational colleges, regional banks, clusters of local autonomous institutions that give a sense of place and a sense of value.
We could join up the ways that people choose to participate and choose to be active in society with local institutions and their role, and really meet people on their terms.
For me, what's going to be really interesting in the next 10 years is whether the institutions of democracy can reinvent themselves from the inside out to respond to this new world.